Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here, almost lunchtime, and thank you to the organizing committee. It is a great pleasure for me to be here to briefly share this research that is from within a postdoctoral grant by the Ministry of Universities and Next Generation AU that I undertook last year. Within this research group that you mentioned, Ecocriticism and Environmental Humanities in Alcalá de Henares University and the Franklin Institute. So my presentation is titled Fighting Human Exceptionalism and Animal Cruelty through a revision of ecocritical-posthuman subjects in one of the latest novels of Lydia Millet, published in 2022, that is framed within a neocolonial context of ecocide and awareness of progressive mass extinction of species, ecosystems, acknowledges the human footprint in the Anthropocene. And this particular novel vividly evokes this multispecies dialogue between human, non-human animals, and it creatively denounces this human exceptionalism and animal cruelty. For those who are not familiar with Lydia Millet, she really fuels ecological imagination through the power of human creativity. And in recent decades, I mean, she has published 16 novels, and she has become one of the most committed U.S. literary voices nowadays, raising awareness of the need of interspecies dialogue. So today I would like to pay attention to how this novel really provides, or it could be argued to provide, a counter-narrative to a culture that legitimizes violence, has normalized violence against animals and the non-human, and how Lydia Millet develops a posthumanist consciousness through her main protagonist, who is a millionaire called Jill, who profoundly defines the status quo, and his eight-year-old neighbor, Tom. There are many other characters, but due to time, we'll only focus on these two. And I approached this analysis through an ecocritical-posthuman lens. And also, I will pay attention how through fiction, it allows us to project the latest theories within the field of ecocriticism, such as rewilding or degrowth, and really reveals human arrogance that ignores this dignity of every sentient being. So first of all, then why I argue that she really helps to visually narrate this theory of ecocritical-posthuman subjects. Well, unfortunately, we know that we live in a culture that is rooted in human exceptionalism and in violence and cruelty towards the human, non-human, and all the living beings. And this violence has been normalized and has been institutionalized. And within the literary and cultural studies, ecocriticism really places literature at the center of an ecological vision, an ecological debate. And what I find very interesting about this novel is that it really allows us to find and to articulate these latest theories within the field, such as this awareness of the Anthropocene, but also the discussion of the need to situate knowledge and experience, and the fact that not due to the legacy of colonialism, not all human populations have polluted and are as accountable in this ecological crisis. So also the awareness of the Capitalocene or the environmental justice. And also the latest developments on this awareness of what is called the symbiocene or the symbiotic posthumanism. That really is a new, as Albrecht's latest publication really describes, symbiocene is putting a name to an old scientific fact, and is that we are in symbiotic relationship to all that exists. But at the same time, this word, it really embraces a new period of human intelligence and praxis, aimed at counterbalancing the corrosive forces of Anthropocene and Capitalocene. And of course, within all these positions, there is a critical questioning of specificism, and that really within ecocriticism forwards this resignification of non-humans, no longer peripheral voices, but protagonists in the narrative events. And so within the posthumanism in itself, and also, within the field of environmental humanities, animism, animal studies really emerge as this interdisciplinary international social force that not only defends the animal rights, but at the same time, it really advocates for a profound reflection or transformation of what are really the values that shape human identity. We know here very briefly very important names in this discussion: Donna Haraway, Carl Wolfe, David Herman. They all been resignifying traditional literary discourses and representations, interrogating really this logic of domination, this anthropocentrism, and advocating for new possible imaginaries. Also, it's important, this new trend within post-human theories in the last decades that is going as is going as new rationalism, for example by Regan Negarestani. They really advocate for the need to go back to human rationalism and really use it against dystopias, and use human rationale also to fight the forces of the Capitalocene. And so in that sense, also with Bradotti, for example, they're really denouncing the status quo and really advocating for an intersectional position, understanding that, as we mentioned, it's been said in some of the lectures today, the need of an intersectional approach, that the interlocking nature of oppressions. And so within all that, and of course, I don't have time, but new materialisms that really put attention in the embodiment and agency of the human and the non-human in cultural and literary text. So really, out of all these new developments in posthuman theories, I embrace Garo Wolfe's. He's one of the founding figures of animal studies and posthumanist theory, and he really emphasizes that posthumanism, of course, has to do with technological advancements, artificial intelligence, and also the blurring of the physical boundaries. But at the same time, in line with neo-rationalism, for him, it's important to understand that posthumanism is what comes before and after traditional humanism, in the sense that it's necessary to go back and understand the need of this physical materiality and agency. But at the same time, it's need to take a step farther. And posthumanist thinking needs to have a revolution of thought in terms of our normative thinking and the status quo. As he says in this quote, which I think is very explicatory, he says, quote, "When we speak of posthumanism, we're not simply referring to the thematic of decentering the human in relation to the evolutionary, ecological, and technological coordinates, although is where the conversation usually begins and too often ends, but rather, and this is the key for the following part of my analysis, I will insist that we're also talking about how thinking confronts these issues, what thinking must become in the face of these challenges." So in that sense, posthumanism and ecocritical subjects are those who are able to denounce human exceptionalism, and denounce animal cruelty, and providing a counter-narrative to this normative culture that legitimizes violence. So just looking now at the analysis of these main characters, we find all these posthumanist revolution in thought by a character that he's very conscious about its own privileged situation. He's very conscious about the norm that has been imposed as this white superiority. He acknowledges that the money that has inherited comes from his family making a lot of money out of oil and gas, polluting the environment. And so from the very beginning, we find that this is not the typical millionaire who is he's very conscious about the fact that all this class system and all these social inequalities, from his point of view, on a moral level, as he says here in different quotes, all very rich people should give away all their wealth. At the beginning, we know that he when he comes to age and inherits this money, he wants to just give it away. But then he realizes that the best use of this money is in this quote is this philanthropic wealth management, and be able to donate it and somehow monitor that this money has a real impact. He has, for someone who is at the elite of this society, he does have a sense of duty and responsibility. And even though he has so much money that he didn't even have to work, he's always volunteering his time. I will mention it now, a couple of examples. And even the fact that when he's without doing anything, he finds that, as he says here, idleness depressing. At the beginning, we find a story of someone who has been left by his girlfriend of 15 years old. And so he decides to move from New York to Arizona, and he does not take any transportation. So this is also an example of degrowth. And we, as in his own words, he finds he doesn't even want to take the plane, so he will not pollute. And he finds that even when he travels, he will never go into the expensive one, as he said here. He's always flown cheaply because he finds that a moral obligation, because his dollars are better spent on charity. So, as I said, this is someone who is very critical about his own background, about his class privilege, and also he becomes this voice of this conscious, non-irresponsible global north. There are many instances in which he's very critical about the United States as this country of ignorant people who really are cheating on science, cheating on their future. And also he's critical, I mean, not just about animal cruelty, especially about birds. I mean, it seems like today's panel is all about birds mostly. But also these symbols of very cruel violence that we somehow turn a blind eye and we have normalized in our everyday interactions, such as, wearing tattoos of swastikas, Nazi symbols. So he's always confronting that, and he's always criticizing that as a leadership issue. Also, he is someone who always put in the common good before his self-interest. He's always looking for devoting his time to volunteer. He said that he even had a job once, but then he realized that somebody else needed it more. As he says, it was a problem that he always had with all jobs since he discovered he was rich. Someone needed them more. Even he hires people. He ended up doing their work because he feels sorry that they like, for example, here the gardener, he has a joint problem. And so he's not this competitive person that is the icon of this capitalist drive society. He's the opposite. He only wants to be of use. He only wants to, as he says, the only thing he wants when he dies is that someone would put on his gravestone, he tried to be of use. From the very beginning that he decides to walk to Arizona instead of taking any transportation, we find a clear example of the theories of degrowth are rewilding, because it's when he slows down that he's able to actually come to terms and being able to notice birds. By the way, the title of the novel is Dinosaurs, because we get to know by actually the structure of the whole novel, as I'm going to mention later, in terms of all the different chapters are structured around different types of birds. And actually we learn about their intelligence, their traits. But also in terms of rewilding, it gives us examples of how we can incorporate this series in our everyday. life. For example, he just moved to this house, which is very humble. He could have moved to a wealthy mansion, but he moves to this house that has a white glass door, and that's how he gets to know their neighbors and this 8-year-old boy, Tom. And well, he discovers a building nest next to the terrace, and he decides not to remove it, but to take the bulb, so that way, you know, he prevents the nest. Or, for example, instead of fixing, you know, the fence in his yard, he realizes that through a hole, wildlife are using that as a way to reach his artificial pond and drink. So families of birds coming through his fence, and that's a way of not, you know, incorporating and rewilding it in a way. And then also this humanist exceptionalism vertebrates the whole novel. We learn bits and pieces about intelligence, about all these different birds that all of a sudden he's aware, and he starts all these evening walks throughout his neighborhood, and that's where he starts spotting all of them. And it's through this little boy that he ends up babysitting that he also becomes the voice of all these birds, and somehow teaches Jill about their intelligence. Like, for example, the hummingbirds, even though they're smallest birds, they have exceptional memories. They even retain impression of every fowler they visited. Also, we learn about, you know, in terms of finding how little humans are in regards to invertebrates in this planet, such as as insects, and really there is an evolution in Gill in which he also develops this more symbiotic awareness that somehow resembles the debate within ecocritical studies from the awareness of the Anthropocene, then Capitalocene, and then the Symbiocene. There's many instances throughout the novel where it is debated how the ethical dimension of eating meat, and also opposing animal cruelty in all these farms, as we also had in one of the lectures today. And so, but again, this idea about deconstructing human exceptionalism by learning about the intelligence of all these different non-human animals. Also, the ravens are highly intelligent. Even the ants help each other. And then just getting to one of the most important parts of the novel, in which he realizes in his evening walks that there being a lot of birds are being hunted just by sports, and they're just not even used or eaten. They're just abandoned there, and that's when he really we find the true posthuman evolution in the character. And he actually decides there is as this last quote here. As the weeks progress, he feels much more enraged about the situation, and then he's asking for advice. Then we find the normative, right, in this system, in which even if you report to the feds, you know, there's always going to be narrowed down to a fine, because hunting, it really provides a lot of money. And so he uses his money to really find the best equipment he can have to be able to monitor who is hunting, or to able to cut that person. And then this is one of the moments in which he actually cuts his neighbor, the one that is actually killing the birds. And it's one of the climaxes of the novel, in which he actually is defending them as his birds. Well, while he's doing this, he actually falls into an aisle of cactus, and he gets all these different he's spin all over, and then somehow he is how to say, he has like a toxic reaction, so he's delirating a little bit. But within this delirium, he's very clear in this interaction with the neighbor. Listen, Gary, you need to stop shooting my birds, as she says in the quote. Your birds, they're not your birds. Well, in a way they are, said Jill. Come on, you're fucked up, dude. Look at you. You should be in the ER because of the reaction he's getting out of the cactus. But, well, I've been looking for you because the birds are mine, and they're mine because I give a shit. I care about it, right? And this is the last quote of the novel, in which, you know, after this encounter, he's really having all these reaction and somehow is delirium, but at the same time he has this catharsis moment, in a way, his enlightenment moment, in which he sees himself truly in a symbiotic relationship that all that exists. He sees that the separateness is always been an illusion, and somehow we have no beginning and no end, right? Because of this symbiotic. So just to finish, what we find here in this novel is a great invitation to interrogate this prevailing logic of domination. We find instances of analyzing anthropocism, specificism, and mostly to discover this hope in a conscious and responsible response to animal cruelty, because, as I say, it really is counter-narrating a lot of dystopias, a lot of hopelessness that we find in Clive fiction today. Again, is trying to find a hope that somewhat those who are in a position of power can really have ethical grounding, moral grounding, and act. At the same time, it really interrogates how we have normalized this disconnection with the suffering of others through this hunting. And also, as I said here, the key for me in this post-human understanding of this different in human thought is that those who are in this situation of privilege, that really criticize this white superiority, and they really provide a voice in this ecocide, and use their money, right, to actually have an impact. And again, this is in line with your developments in post-human theories, about actually not just rejecting human logic, but embracing human logic, human values, human principles, sense of duty. And for me, it's very important to highlight that we need to be hopeful about human nature, a human race, especially those who of us who are in privileged positions. So just to finish, it's been eco-critical also because the need to reevaluate basic values of our societies through literature. And really, I think it really highlights the crucial role of literary expressions in redirecting this human consciousness, and to embrace the human and the non-human, and fighting against human exceptionalism and animal cruelty. So, well, thank you very much. Sorry if I passed the time a little bit. So, thank you.